Well, thank you all for coming and piling in this beautiful gem in South Ken at this hotel. Shoshana, it's so great to have you. So Shoshana Stewart, let me give you we're going to do a little intro. And sorry I printed out stuff. I'm very old school. This is how I operate. So Shoshana Stewart is the president of Turquoise Mountain. It's a foundation that was established by King Charles at the time he was Prince Charles in 2006. You've been with them from the very beginning.
Yeah.
It's 20 years this year. And you work with artisans, preserving heritage and culture and identity through difficult communities, so let's put it that way. Afghanistan, Jordan, Myanmar, Palestine, Saudi Arabia, and hopefully the list will continue. Yeah. What you have built is extraordinary. You've had over 11,500 artisans trained. 180 historic buildings have been restored. You've provided 275,000 people with health care. And over $41 million worth of craft have been brought to international markets through Turquoise Mountain, which is just astonishing. You started Turquoise Mountain from the very beginning. You've got a master's in education, did your MBA at London Business School, and you have a degree in astrophysics, which is just
a little bit random.
Need I say more? I'm just crawling out the door, but that's brilliant. So really the synergy when we met felt very compatible between what I've tried to endeavor to work on and what Turquoise Mountain has done, clearly at a much larger scale, which is celebrating talent, artisanal craft, working with communities, driving sustainable entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, and really working with communities who are at the forefront of making beautiful things, but with purpose. So what drew me to this was to say, how do we explore this synergy and making sure that we find beautiful things, but we find beautiful things around the world that we can preserve and that have purpose. So, welcome. And very happy to have you.
It's a total pleasure to be here.
So what I thought, I was going to break it down into themes. So the first one is origin and mission. So how did Turquoise Mountain begin and why Afghanistan?
Okay, wonderful. Well, it is wonderful to be here. And Sarah and I sat next to each other at dinner and then ended up having coffee together. And there's just an alignment in how we see the world and the importance of this stuff. So what is this stuff and why do we do it? So roll back the clock 20 years ago. Then the Prince of Wales met the Afghan president, President Karzai at the time, here in London at the School of Traditional Arts, the Prince's School of Traditional Arts, which is an incredible institution, focuses on Islamic art and art more widely, but it's just unbelievable quality. This is about excellence and connection to heritage. And President Karzai said, we've had a war in my country for the last 3 decades. All of our traditions are disappearing. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had something like this? So we were born. So we were created in Afghanistan because of that serendipity. But actually, and I lived there for 5 years, and we built an institute, the baby sister school to the School of Traditional Craft, which is still operating today with hundreds of students.
Notwithstanding all of the issues with women, and
all the
employment, education.
Absolutely. We will work with thousands of artisans across Afghanistan this year, the vast majority of whom are women.
Wow.
And that's in education, vocational training, healthcare, which you mentioned. We run a clinic for 35,000 people, which is in the old city of Kabul, but also across the north of the country in weaving households. That's more community health work. So what began there has then expanded to other places, and each of those other places is a different sort of serendipity, but it is fundamentally about the belief that cultural heritage matters in the world. It matters and has an amazing ability to transform people's lives. It creates employment, but also, why are we all here? There's something about this that matters to us. You and I connect over this. Yeah. The stories about individual traditions, about people, and an increasingly sort of fraught, disconnected world. I think it'll matter more, not less.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also the sense of origin, when the world is becoming so homogenized, to make sure that we retain identity, belonging, heritage. Like, who are we if we don't have some residence? And where do we come from? And where do things come from? And then, how do you preserve things that have been handed down? I mean, it's sad that our kids don't see, this sort of stuff anymore. King Charles has been involved from the very beginning. What does that relationship look like in terms of practice over the 20 years? I mean,
well, it's a funny one because he's sort of the original serial entrepreneur. He just wants stuff done, right? He's created these projects, and in this case, we have tried to sort of be what he believes in the world, which actually there was a film made about it recently that you can see on Amazon called Harmony. Okay. It's his vision of the way that we as humans exist and coexist with nature, with each other. There's an element of spirituality in it. And he creates these sort of harmony projects, which are, it's integrated. There are lots of bits of jargon, but fundamentally, that's what we kind of do. So what happens is, if there's something that he thinks is interesting, I get asked if I can do it. Maybe I can do it, maybe I can't. But that's how a lot of our country projects have happened. But then, actually, just saw him this morning. And, there's all sorts of other things, like, when he turned 75, I said, "Sir, what would you like for your birthday? I've got a whole craft organization. What would you like?" And he wanted a runner for Sandringham Castle. So we created this 23-meter long runner in the exact colors of those walls, which they just finished in Jowzjan in northern Afghanistan and just shipped it here. So it was just rolled out. I
mean, he's like the exemplary role model for this sort of thing, I mean, if he can get anything he wants, right? The fact that he sees
that's
the appreciation of that is brilliant. And I think that lends us all to say, well, wait a second, let's also lean into this and see how we can also support. And these are beautiful things, because I can't imagine he would settle for anything else.
No. If I send something that doesn't work, it definitely is.
I'm sure it goes back. I mean, NGO or no NGO, it's like it's not going to cut the mustard, Let's move on to the artisans themselves. Ultimately, this is about Turquoise Mountain engaging with people, with artisans and heritage. Can you tell me about one specific artisan whose story has resonated with you?
Yes, so many, so difficult. I think, so this is partially connected to something you said a moment ago about the next generation and about the world being homogeneous and trying to get back to roots and things like that. It made me think of Seema, who's a weaver in Bamiyan, central Afghanistan. And she, learned to weave from her mother and her grandmother before that. But the key thing is she has a situation right now where she does not have a lot of options, and her family and the men in her family are not employed because the economy in Afghanistan has contracted by 25%. So there are not jobs. They want to work, but there are not jobs. So she is weaving, and she is the central breadwinner in her family. But what we're doing right now, and this is sort of where it gets cool, because that is a necessity that she can bring an income into her family. But we need the joy and the connection in life, right? We all need that. We're doing something right now actually between Afghan and Saudi women, which is around weaving and around a shared tradition, which the Dari word for it is bakhcha, but it's a sort of textiles that are used for wrapping up treasured objects. So many cultures have this, right? Which is that you take a piece of fabric and you put what's important in it, and then you move with it. So there are a group of designers, 2 Saudi designers, 1 Afghan designer, who have made these very beautiful, really paintings and stories, which are then being woven into carpets by Seema and others. They're so cool. So that's going to be launched later this year. But that's where this world of craft becomes so much more, because it is about those people knowing each other. Across the language barrier, but realizing that there are shared traditions.
Yeah. And we're going to get on to one of the topics, soft diplomacy. That's exactly what that is, right? You're bringing people from different perspectives together. Yeah. And they're creating their new history. What particular craft has Turquoise Mountain helped preserve that, had you guys not come in, it may have dissipated?
So I think the most noticeable example is a ceramics tradition in Afghanistan, in a place called Istalif, which is about an hour north of Kabul on the Shamali Plain. And it's this beautiful turquoise. Now, when I went to Afghanistan, you can buy Istalifi pottery. In fact, people do. It is actually very widely bought.
Internationally?
No, locally.
I was going to say
it is not dishwasher
where's
safe.
that .com?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, there is the word is Ishkar, and there is an Ishkar.com, which is a wonderful retailer, which was sort of born out of two of my former staff members, evoking this exact thing, which is that you can buy these pots, but the glaze is not the traditional glaze. It's a chemical copy that they import from Pakistan. Great. The traditional glaze is from a plant ash, and then you basically fire it in the kiln 3 different times. You mix it with quartz and hakubarakat and with iron oxide, and you can move the spectrum from blue to green, so you've got the whole turquoise spectrum. It's an incredible natural glaze. Incredible natural glaze. They weren't using it anymore. So Abdul Mateen, who was the head of our sort of ceramics program, we were like, we got to get this back. And he was telling us the stories of how the Istilifi community they trace their roots back to Bukhara 400 years ago. So it is the same tradition of that turquoise that you see on the Registan in Samarkand. It's the same stuff. It's that same glaze. We were like, we got to figure out how to make it again. So everyone goes tromping up into the mountains behind Istalif to find the bush that you have to burn. Wow. So we did it. So we recreated Ishkar glaze. But you also then have to figure out, because obviously the alchemy of ceramics is that you've got to get the temperature right, but also there are going to be ceramicists in the audience who are nodding vigorously, and then I'm going to go way into a rabbit hole that I don't understand, right? But you have to get the way that, they've moved away from that glaze, which means that the alchemy between the clay, the slip, the temperature, the glaze is fundamentally different. So you have to completely go back to the beginning, and just incredible tests. So that process meant Ishkar glaze is intact again.
Oh my gosh, wow. Okay, moving on to women, craft, and power. So I want to talk about women specifically because Turquoise Mountain and me are clearly led by women who are at the center of, we're makers, we're buyers, we're leaders, we're mothers, we're daughters, we're decision makers. They say most of the economy today in the world is driven by women, because we are the ones that choose and make decisions. Mm-hmm. So Procter & Gamble, when they run advertising campaigns, they're constantly, their market are women, because we actually make decisions. So how significant is the role of women in the artisanal communities that you work with in Saudi, in Afghanistan, across the other countries? And what is the impact that this has on the economic empowerment on women and their societies?
Yeah, I mean, 95% of the artisans we work with are women. Each craft is very different. Mother of pearl inlay in Syria is very male dominated, though super interestingly, which is almost my answer to artisan who inspires me at the moment, because I was just in Jordan, and so most are women is the answer.
And just
yeah.
Okay, what countries are you operating?
Okay, so Afghanistan. Next was Myanmar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, then Palestine, and now Syria. I've been in Syria for about a year.
These are all complex.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. But
and they all, we work where traditions are under threat. But they're under threat in very different ways if we're talking about Afghanistan and Saudi Arabia.
Sure.
You can make the argument that they're under threat everywhere, right? I mean, I could work with woodworkers in Vermont.
England.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
We're not particularly suited to that.
Yeah, okay.
There are regional familiarities, and I have 500 staff members, and 490 of them are in and from those countries. That's where we live and work. So, it would make more sense for us to start working in Uzbekistan or in Lebanon than it would in Jamaica.
Sure.
But so it's those 6 countries. It's about 5,000 artisans this year. But as I say, 95% of them are women. And in the case of really devastating situations economically, which is Afghanistan and Myanmar in particular, they are just the only breadwinners in their homes. There are not jobs in rural Afghanistan. There are not jobs in Myanmar. Most of the weavers we work with are displaced. We work with weavers in Chin, Kachin, from Rakhine, who are displaced Kaya states, which are in a state of outright conflict. But then you have different kinds of places like Jordan, Palestine, Saudi Arabia. I mean, each of those are different, right?
Sure.
So I was just with Farida in Jordan, and she is a Jordanian woman who decided she wanted to learn mother of pearl inlay. She applies for our training program. We're like, yeah, let's do it. But how's that going to work? Because are you going to go into Abu Abdo's workshop, which is just a bunch of men? He's kind of like, well, maybe, but I don't really know how that's going to work, right? So you fast forward, we figure out how to do it, and she is unbelievably good. Look her up on Instagram, Farida Studio. You can just buy from her. Please do buy from her.
Farida's studio.
Farida Studio. And she's caused us to actually make our own mother of pearl workshops so that women can enter this and have a space that works. So then they can then go set up their own businesses. But she's made now 2/3 of our woodworking students are women, which is so interesting.
So this is social entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
This leads to social empowerment, right? Because ultimately economic empowerment is real empowerment in so many ways.
Absolutely.
And you see the multiplier effect of that? Do you see the impact it has on the community, on the way they bring up their kids, on the choices they make, right? I mean,
absolutely.
It's a game changer?
It's a game changer. And I think, of course it's a game changer. I mean, in every country, again, we could give so many examples, but to see a mother be a business owner, to see the mother be the income source, the decision maker, I mean, it is fundamental for the next generation.
Yeah.
I've loved watching that in Saudi Arabia and the way that it's changed. We now, I mean, when I started going to Saudi, whenever we started 13, 12 years ago, you had one situation. And now we run a jewelry course, and I met a mother-daughter pair who are taking it together, Huda and Narmeen, and they just represent the two generations in Saudi, right? The mother is fully covered, very highly educated, doesn't speak any English. Daughter, who is fully covered in very bright blue, speaks impeccable English and Arabic, and also very highly educated. And these two women are doing this together, and the mother is supporting the daughter. And there's something about that. I don't even know what the conclusion is.
There's been a systemic shift,
Yeah.
right? I mean, when I wrote my DPhil, and I interviewed 10 Arab women who across the Middle East who were precursors to change. So the first Muslim woman to win the Olympic gold medal in 1984. We talked about this. Lubna Alayan, who ran first businesswoman. So I interviewed these 10 women. It was very interesting because in those days, these women were precursors to change. They were change agents, but their fathers were the guys. And I remember that because I had a father who pushed me.
Yes.
And yet the generation has changed. Today, it's the moms. The mothers are now pushing their girls, pushing their boys, right? It's a very different, the narrative has changed.
Yeah.
So to see that shift, because the minute these women become empowered, the way they're empowering their children to make choice. And choice is the ultimate power, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
the choice to break bread with who,
to
partner with somebody, to work with someone. Choice is a luxury, and not everybody has that.
Yeah.
So these kids are being brought up by mothers who in themselves are power tools.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is where that's the shift.
Totally.
You know, otherwise you can preach all you want, but until you have the mother that's changing the narrative, there's no change. I mean, at least in my opinion. So it's nice to see that it's happening. It's a ripple effect, right?
I agree.
Let me ask you, you and I are both, women working in this world of organizations or whatever. How much of what you do is also about demonstrating what female leadership looks like?
I've realized over time that it is more than I realized, which is sort of so obvious. But I was raised, I think, by two parents in upstate New York where it was just a given that I could do whatever I wanted. And I took that completely for granted.
Such a luxury.
Such a luxury. So I show up in Afghanistan as a volunteer and I'm tromping around, and then I get a job. And by the time I'm managing 500 old Afghan men, I'm like, yeah, this is totally normal. Not at all normal. Why was that normal? So I kind of didn't notice that I was doing the thing.
But surely you would have seen how they reacted to you.
Yes, but I had Afghanistan was a weird way to do that because of the extreme gender divide and norms. Afghan men had a sense of what foreign men should be like in this room. Who walks through the door first? Who sits at the head of the table? Do you raise your voice? Do you not? Do you micromanage? They have a very strong sense of what an Afghan man would do, which they can put onto a Western man. They don't have any idea what I should be like. Should I walk through the door first or second?
There's no benchmark.
There is zero benchmark. So I was like, you go in the alien category. Generally, happy to disregard, but if you happen to do some stuff that's useful, well, okay, we're going to do that. So I actually got a weird free pass.
Wow.
I also think, oddly, being 6 feet tall just confuses people. I was genuinely an alien. But so Afghanistan was a weird one. I was actually taken as myself in a way that I think was slightly unusual.
Wow.
And they walk around and just call me boss. Boss John. Which is not the honorific.
Respect for your power.
Yeah, it's super interesting.
You were genderless.
And they don't use the they use one of the honorifics for me, but not the other, not a male one. Which anyway, it's super interesting. But then I watch over the course of 5 years, the men in my office be different. You know, I can remember someone in my sort of central team who was a young man and brought up in a minor city, and we were sort of doing an interview for a finance assistant. And he was like, well, obviously, she can't go through it because she's a woman. I was like, okay, we'll take a step back, you know. But that's just the starting point. 5 years later, he's a different person, and he's sort of championing the women in his office, and his daughters are beginning to grow up. I mean, I've just watched him change. We're the same age. I've watched a generational change.
Beautiful. So it's an education.
Totally.
You educated men.
Apparently. But I'm much more, I mean, it's so ridiculous to say this, but this is me in my mid-20s, right? I'm now in my mid-40s, I watch the women in our organization, and we are a majority, I suppose, women-led across our senior management team. Talia, our creative director, who's been doing this with me for the last 20 years. Our 3 country directors in the Levant are 3 Levantine women running their own country offices, and they are killing it.
Wow.
Salma in Jordan, who's worked for us for 9 years, and she is ready to lead. She's got a young family, and I'm just like, I can put myself back in that place. Your life is chaos. Like, let's do this together. And, you know, so I love now slightly more consciously thinking about what it means to be a professional woman in an environment which is fundamentally different than being a professional woman 30 years ago, 50 years ago, and each country is different, but I absolutely love it. I think it's so fun, and I've got a bunch of men in my senior management team and across the organization who champion the women in their lives.
I love that. I think it's great, and I don't think there's one way to do it, you know. And
No,
I think there's this
right.
idea that, you know, you can be an empowered woman in my part of the world and still very much lean into one's femininity, still understand that there's female power, masculine power. Yeah. There's a place for men, 100%. Man needs to be man, at least in my opinion. Yes. But there's a space for women to lead. Yes. The way we bring up our kids, the decisions we make, and I think it can look different wherever you go. And some will be covered and some will not, and that's okay. Yeah. And I don't think that there's no conflict there. Not everything has to look one way. And I think the beauty is understanding that there are differences, but there's power even in those differences. And there's a humbling element to it, because even I would superimpose like my Western judgment sometimes, you know, and then I'd be like, and then I'd say, well, wait a second, that's wrong of me, because actually this person is far more empowered than people I know who live in London or New York City. You know, and that I think is interesting how that plays out in different ways.
I couldn't agree more. It is something I've been thinking a lot about recently, and had an amazing conversation with a senior Labour Party politician about this, actually, having visited the Middle East recently and been very taken aback by assumptions and things that she didn't know. And there's much more that I'm learning. I've been on a recent journey of faith myself, and I have realized that we have so many more assumptions than we think about what being a powerful woman is in terms of clothing, covering our heads, not covering our heads, our relationship to faith, how we interact with men, whether we how we compare ourselves or differentiate ourselves. I obviously come from a very Western version of that, but I've been working and living not in the West. And so I've got a kind of mangled version, actually. But it's made me so much more aware of the weird mosaic of assumptions of all those things. And I think, the sort of the international sisterhood needs to embrace so many of those variations.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think even within the Middle East, or even in this part of the world, the differences from one country to the next are huge. This idea that, or it's like the Arab woman. There is no Arab woman.
Yes.
And that's a huge fallacy, I mean, I fall into it too, but it's like, what do you mean? A woman from Lebanon has nothing to do with like a woman from Egypt or a woman from Qatar, for example. And those nuances are really important.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, So let's move on to soft diplomacy and cultural bridges. I'd like to think that, we both engage with soft diplomacy through the platforms that we work on. The idea that culture, craft, they build understanding. They build worlds that people might not always understand. So Turquoise Mountain operates in places of real geographic and geopolitical complexity. Afghanistan, Palestine, Myanmar, Syria. How does craft function as a form of diplomacy in these environments?
Trojan horse is the word I'm looking for now. It's so funny because I have had said to me a number of times, well, culture is so political, which of course I get. But my lived experience over the last 20 years in these countries is that cultural heritage is the great connector. I don't think unifier exactly. It's a conversation, but it takes the heat out of it. Yeah, it definitely.
It's like a lubricant.
It is. It's and so, in Afghanistan, I believe that we can do all the things that we do because we're a cultural heritage organization. Because the way that the Taliban interact with us is they come down to the old city, the 150 buildings we've restored. There's a clinic. We run a primary school, which is totally not allowed. I mean, you can be in primary education, but NGOs are not allowed to do it. Westerners are not. I mean, foreign organizations are not allowed to be poisoning the minds of Afghan children. They come up, they see these beautiful buildings. It's like every Afghan minister I've ever toured anywhere, any time over the last 20 years. And they go, oh, this is like the house of my grandfather. Please, will you come to Kandahar and do my house? Like,
wow.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. That's all of a sudden you're not the International Charity of King Charles.
You're restoring pride.
Yeah. And you're like, we're also like, we're kind of the nerdy building people. Like, we want to talk to people about we're like, can we show you the difference between the straw content in the interior mud plaster and the exterior mud plaster? And they're like, okay, yes, laughing. So I do think that meeting people around heritage and beauty and aesthetics is just a fundamentally different way to start. And also, like in Myanmar, right before the military coup, the government was half military. Well, actually, it was about 25% at that point. And we had a sort of craft exhibition right before COVID. And it was like every ethnic group in Myanmar, that is not a thing. No, I'm not even going to put words to that. And they walk in and they're like, yes, this is our country.
No way.
Okay.
Wow.
But
So
I've seen it
pride.
again and again. It does.
Yeah.
But somehow, and it allows us to do so much more. So I think that's one bit of it, is that it does take the heat out of adversarial problematic divisions.
It depoliticizes.
Yeah, I think it does.
That's amazing. And one sees that because pride over trumps whatever sort of disagreements. At Serra Kirdar, we're about breaking barriers and uniting the world through appreciation of beautiful things made with purpose. Do you feel that Turquoise Mountain plays a role in soft diplomacy in this way?
Yes.
Like a mission?
Absolutely. I mean, it basically is central to our mission, which is that we don't care about cultural heritage so that it can be preserved in a little sort of preserved microclimate. This is about it mattering to the world and connecting us. The main line to my mission is that you all will meet Afghanistan through lapis lazuli and those lattice tradition and motif overlaid, and we can have a conversation about how that's traditionally over doors and windows.
You did in the Connaught, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of the things at Turquoise Mountain, they work with Asprey. You've worked with huge organizations, connected artisans to some fabulous weavers, textiles. I mean, there's some fabrics that I want my house to have, like, sofas. But
Please.
you also worked to help them create a fabulous suite
Yeah.
at the Connaught.
Yeah.
So that's also, I suppose.
Exactly. So if you go stay at Suite 509, the King's Lodge at the Connaught, please do, you will walk into...
Check in there next week, guys.
Please. An incredible Mughal-themed suite. And it brought together 100 artisans, Syrian, Jordanian, Myanmar, and Afghan.
Oh, it's fabulous.
It's so cool. And so, there's so much behind that, depends on how much you want to dig into it, but you can meet the carpet weaving traditions of Afghanistan.
Amazing.
Meet Afghanistan through beauty.
Go
you
to the
can
Connaught,
meet Myanmar.
you'll find Afghanistan.
You'll find Afghanistan.
That's
and then
fabulous.
how, the Mughal Empire, and what did it cover? It did not cover Syria, but all of those traditions and how those motifs are shared. So it is something about interacting with a place rather than through geopolitics.
And how do you navigate political challenges to get the job done?
It's chaotic. No, I mean, the technical answer is my staff just live in these countries, and we just spend a lot of time touring people around so that people like us. It's not more complex than that. What it isn't, and I think that for larger organizations, big multinational and INGOs and UN have to have a more formal relationship with the host government. We're a little bit less, I mean, we are registered and all the things, but basically we just got to get them down if they like what we do. It's sort of...
Okay. We're moving on to heritage in a changing world. So something I find genuinely worrying is we live with beautiful things that are slowly disappearing. And I think this is sort of where you guys are working very hard and very fastidiously to try and make sure that we preserve century-old techniques. Which craft tradition do you believe are most at risk of disappearing? And what are the specific forces threatening them?
I mean, every country has traditions at risk of disappearing.
Within your organization.
Just came back from Riyadh, and the coffee. What's the word? No, not even the finjan, but the della.
The della, yeah.
The della. Nobody can make it anymore.
What?
In Saudi. People can make it in other countries, but theirs are different.
This is a traditional Saudi
coffee.
Qahwa, yeah. Bahrain has a,
Not a carafe. What, I can't even think of the English word for it. A coffee pot.
It's a coffee pot with the long
with the
spout and very
So nobody can make that. I keep trying to get the government excited about it. We're like, this is the thing. Come on, let's do it. Anyway, so that's totally on the verge of disappearing, or it's just going to be un-Saudiized. It'll be buying the Egyptian version. It'll be buying the Lebanese version, whatever. Which is okay, but that's not the point. Let's celebrate the differences and the interesting connections and whatever. In Syria, we work in Aleppo and got incredible stained glass. There are no stained glass makers in Syria. I mean, there's one glass maker really functioning, but the stained glass is a different technique. So next.
Wow.
Nablus tiles, which are so wonderful. There's one tile maker left in Palestine. This is the Aslan family. They are in Nablus. They will be the center of the Design Doha Biennale in November. But, if the Aslans don't pass it down to the next generation, which they are, and if we don't buy from them, they're not going to pass it on to the next generation. So there are lots. But actually, the leap to it being, I mean, we think a lot about the safe number of artisans, because you have to choose where you put your resources and whether you're going to keep training, making more workshops in this type, whatever else. Genuinely, the workable, viable minimum here is just make it to the next generation. Just keep the workshop going another generation.
Pass it
2
on.
workshops would be nice, but it doesn't have to be that you have an entire industry, because there are some industries which are not that internationally competitive. Now, Blissy tiles, for example, they make that type of tile in different places in the Levant. They're very heavy, so I
It's
use
work
them
in a house that has like
It's not.
ceilings that are going to
Yeah, so yes, but also just the cost to ship them to Britain is expensive. I think it's probably not going to be a commercially viable product. Doesn't mean that you can't do it a bit, but that's about preserving something for its own sake, even if it is not massively internationally competitive.
So that brings me to my next question. There's a tension between keeping something authentic and
Yeah.
making it commercially viable.
Yeah.
How do you hold the two things in balance? By, I suppose, by saying, okay, which ones do we
Yes.
pass on? And
Yeah, I think, first of all, that we are a charity and not a business for us matters. I mean, you can be a very purpose-driven business, which relies on the person, which is wonderful. We're a little bit, well, we probably could, but then as soon as I need to pass it on or whatever else, an organization changes. Our mission is to preserve. So when we are doing commercial activity, it is in the name of preserving tradition. So if you take carpets, for example, which is the largest thing we do anywhere, the thing we sell the most of, we could make more money, we could sell more total, and we could make a higher margin, which pays for the whole thing. Well, not the whole thing, but pays for this. Let me roll back the clock. It does not pay for the whole thing. It pays for, it is, the commercial activity that we do is self-sufficient. So the shipping, the logistics, all the chaotic things when things get stopped at the border and everything like that, I don't need to subsidize that. What I raise funds for is training this generation, the healthcare, restoring historic buildings, etc. Completely lost my train of thought.
so how do you find the balance between what's authentic
Thank you.
and commercial?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So in carpets, we could sell throne room carpet. We could sell spectacular carpets for $500,000 each. I could sell 6 of them. I could focus on selling extraordinary statement carpets for major monuments, and I could probably sell 10 of them a year. I would employ about 300 people, and I would make a much bigger margin. Or I could make very low quality carpets, many, many more of them, and sell many more, employ many more people, make a very, very low margin. We're somewhere in the middle, but it is a decision about that exact balance, which is that I want to actually do one of those statement carpets because I want to stretch the artisans and I want to show off.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. And I want to do enough volume that we're creating
An industry.
Yeah. And so we're somewhere in the middle, which is that we're trying to create enough jobs, enough people are involved, but we're not going to the lowest common denominator. And we're creating a living wage fundamentally. I mean, you can't get too mass, or it's just, I mean, I get the complaint all the time, why are you all so expensive?
Well, I mean,
You want a living wage? You don't want a living wage. Like, what are we talking about here?
yeah, I think it's how do you stay competitive also, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to produce jewelry, and yes, it's all handmade and everything, but if that piece of gold is more expensive than an international brand, you know.
So on that side of
How do
things, we learned very quick. I mean, probably not quickly enough, but at least in the first 5 years, I would say, we learned that we need to be in the right part of the market where people, all of us, want to buy something with purpose, as you say. But we're going to buy it because we love it, we want to wear it, it's beautiful, and it's the correct price, and it's the correct standard.
Yeah.
So you don't get to make something that is more expensive than its competitor or less good than its competitor. You have to be there. But once you are there, that is a value chain that can support a living wage.
Yeah, I think that's the difficult part, right? How do you? How do
It's
you?
very difficult.
A 22-year-old Kabul or Jordanian has choices that their parents don't have. Why would they choose to become a craftsperson? And how does Turquoise Mountain encourage the next generation to pursue participating in cultural craftsmanship?
I think it is so different, back to what you said, by place. I think that the economic imperative is the central driving force in places in much poorer countries. I think, but then what I've realized is, boy, is it not just about money. Because, I mean, of course it's not, and that's where I think this is really the dominant factor in some of the other places in which we work, which is that to have a purposeful job right now is increasingly rare, actually. It's hard.
Back to choice, right? Like, who has choice?
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that surprised me, but with hindsight, it shouldn't have surprised me. You know, over the last sort of 6 years or so now, the world has changed, not for the better. You know, COVID, the coup in Myanmar, the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan, October 7th, Syria, now the Iran war, like so much upheaval, right? So you figure out real quick whether what you do matters. If it doesn't, like, go home. Nobody's going to do it. The artisans are not going to come. They're not going to produce. And we have watched it. We have watched people in the West Bank, you know, at October 7th aside, but with all the assumptions about how devastating that is in Israel and Gaza. But if we just take the West Bank, it was locked down instantly, right? So, like, nobody can move up and down between cities, and it was very dangerous to go through checkpoints, like not okay in any way. So we start calling everyone. So you don't need to deliver your pieces. Like, we're just checking on you. Hold tight. Like, are you able to go out and get food? What's the deal, right? Like, you don't need to get the order, right? And everyone's like, nope. Glasses go. My brother's carrying it to the border. Someone's gonna drive it to Beit Jala. And
wow.
I'm like, okay. It was like, but then I realized, in that case, Mohammed Twam was sitting in his workshop with his son and his cousin. Everyone else in their extended family is sitting home doing absolutely nothing. Once every 3 days, the oldest teenage boy goes out to find food at the shop and then comes back. You don't really want people leaving the house. But everyone's just sitting there in a state of fear. Mohammed Twam is blowing glass.
Yeah. Wow.
Like, he's doing something beautiful. Like, so I've watched.
But that's their salvation.
Yeah.
It's spiritual, it's emotional, of course it's economic, but it's their lifeline.
And when it's bad, it's even more important.
Yeah, that's interesting. Tell us about the education that Turquoise Mountain provides. So how do you actually transfer the skills that have been passed informally through generations into something that can be taught and sustained?
Yeah. It's a little bit of adaptation, I will say. I mean, fundamentally, we run training programs either in our own space or in people's workshops. We sometimes are sort of supporting apprentices into workshops. We'll do the initial training in our bit, and then once they're good enough, they'll go into the workshop, the art master's workshop. But also, there's a sort of transition from a more traditional sort of system of passing it down. If you ask any master artisan how long it will take to learn their skill, they're like, 30 years. They're like, right, what's the first
manual.
Year? What do you do in the first year? You wash my floor. I'm like, okay. What do you do the next year? You can begin to pull the clay out of the bag and add water to it. Add water to the dry pattern. We gotta accelerate this thing, folks, you know. So there's a sort of really fun thing, which is to take the last generation and genuinely try to pull bits of tradition out of it, but make it something that can exist in the modern world. Which is, in that case, you know, you just have to be willing to let young people do what you do more quickly. Like, and if you're not willing to do it, it's no problem. But if this person is willing to do it, that person's going to get our business. And so you see real quick that this is the direction we're going in. People who are not willing to try new things just don't get to participate, really. But then there's also things like, we learned that in a particular tradition in Afghanistan, in calligraphy actually, when you sort of graduated from a certain level, there was a ceremony of giving of a Quran by the teacher to the student and giving of sweets from the student to the ustad. And so we sort of did that again, because that was part of a ritual that could make it into the modern world, whereas the sort of 20-year apprenticeship was not going to survive.
And can you elaborate on Turquoise Mountain? The formal, is there a formal education?
Yes.
And what are the challenges that you face with these generations?
So we do it differently everywhere, and I think that probably is right. I mean, we do, so in Afghanistan, we have an accredited 3-year vocational
Okay, so there's
institution.
a formal process. You can't
Yes.
just be like, hi, I'm here and I want to...
No, you can't just be like, I mean, everywhere we do it, there's a sort of application process because more people want to do it than we have spaces, is the reality. In Afghanistan, the institute is accredited here with city and guilds, and in Afghanistan. But then you have, you have weaving training in rural Myanmar, which is like, okay, we're doing natural dyes over the next 2 weeks. That's what we're doing. We sometimes hand out certificates, sometimes don't, but that isn't really the point. This is about training for something that is needed for a commission coming up, or for changing a problem in the value chain about how we're disposing of dyes and things like that.
And you work with, can you just elaborate, like you'll work with, so you'll have artisans and then
Yep.
you'll, let's say, have a very famous interior decorator.
Yep.
Right? And you make this connection. So something that's sitting in New York,
Yeah.
or I mean,
Yeah.
it's been done by one of your artisans.
Yeah. And the way that works, this is one of the ways it works, right? Is that you find a person, a brand that values purpose and storytelling and authenticity. And then you say, what are we going to do together? Are we going to do textiles? Are you in homewares? What is the thing? And then we design something together. We will do whatever needs to be done, but not anything that doesn't. So if you have, there's a wonderful jeweler called Pippa Small who's in London, and she'll go to Afghanistan. Not a lot of people want to go to Afghanistan, right? That's a slightly different thing. So she'll go and she'll actually design with the artisans. But for somebody who's not going to go to Afghanistan, which is most people, there's a design brief about shape, about color, and that may be everything from technical drawings back to just a general sense that I'd love to riff on jasmine flowers. And so we'll do everything else, which is why we train designers also. And we train makers who want to become designers. So we'll just do the whole value chain end to end.
So for example, with Asprey,
Yes.
you've done work where you've brought your artisans to do products that are
Yes.
sold at Asprey,
Yeah.
which is a phenomenal platform. How did that, like, what was the
So
genesis?
that works. Actually, a mutual friend of ours, Badr Jaffer, said, hey, you all should really be in Asprey's. I was like, yes, no, thank you, Badr, but how are we going to do that? So he introduced me to them.
To John.
Yep, to John Regas. And John sort of saw something in it. And again, I think the sparkle there was a combination of Asprey wanting to really tell its story of artisanship. And they have an incredible hinterland of artisanship. They have their own workshops that I don't think people know
I
enough
grew up
about.
in London with my father going to the old Asprey. Every time he had a gift to give, he gifted somebody from Asprey, and it was all the English, like those leather backgammons,
Yes,
and everything was
exactly.
so traditional. And I suppose my love for niche or
Yes.
sort of distinction came from
Yes.
many years of that, of appreciation. So I love the fact that Asprey has maintained that desire to sort of uphold craftsmanship, but global, which I think is...
But they've really walked the walk on that because it wasn't just making a product, but so we decided they were going to do stone boxes from Afghanistan. These just sort of quite simple but impeccably made lapis, pink onyx, green onyx boxes, and green nephrite. Then we start making them, and it turns out that the spec that Asprey needs is well beyond anything that we've done, and actually that because it's going to be polished. Well, it's going to be polished, so you're going to lose the top. The stone that you buy, there's going to be a lot of waste, and you don't know exactly what you're going to get on the inside. And also, it lands in London, and they examine it for microfractures, so the way it's packed, everything, right? So we realized two things. Number one, we don't actually know how to do it. Secondly, that it's going to be more expensive than we originally quoted for. At that point, they could have said, no, thank you. And they said, we're not paying more. And then we were like, really? You're not paying more? Then we're not doing it. And they said, okay, we'll pay more. And then their artisans, their specialists, stone makers, stone carvers, would do these videos of exactly how to do it and send it to Kabul.
Oh, wow.
And our Mariam Omar, our lead Afghan designer, would sit there with them with these videos. And they literally trained Jalal Ali to just reach a different level.
Wow.
Which is cool. And now actually he left the country. when the Taliban took over. So we've had to find another stone carver who is up to it. But that's meant that him and a group of apprentices, both men and women, have had to get up to that spec.
This is so powerful. So I'm going to let everyone have a little, questions or a chat, but I really wanted to thank you. I'm so honored. King Charles was a friend of my dad's, and so I feel very especially emotionally happy that this has kind of worked out. I look forward to doing so much more with you. We're looking to work with your Saudi team to create a Saudi capsule collection in the fall. Let's see. You guys have amazing artisans, Saudi Arabia, and really this is just the first start of hopefully so many other things. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
Pleasure to be here. Really, thank you, Sarah. I'm such a fan of what you do and the way that you do it, and the way that you put beauty at the center of these things.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So if anyone has anything to add, to ask, more countries that you guys need to go to. I don't know.
I'm not listening to you. We've been talking about Egypt for a very long time.
Oh, yeah. Well, Morocco.
Please.
Yes.
It's a question really about your artisans and to what extent do they actually trademark their goods? Because copying is happening all the time everywhere.
Intellectual property.
Yeah.
So, it's so nuanced. We are dedicated and try to do our best all the time, and it's never perfect, at giving people credit where credit is due. But that's not simple, because if you've got a very individual artisan's particular design. So we've got a beautiful inlaid mosaic table by Muhammad Ibrahim. It's entirely his design. He gets his name on it, that's his design. It's a technique that's been passed down the generations, but he's got that design, right? If you take all the Myanmar textiles in there, all those prints, that is a bit of community heritage. No one artisan owns that. So then the key is about, well, I suppose you've got two bits of responsibility. There's the responsibility to say what that tradition is, and then there's the responsibility to make sure that the value goes to those artisans. So that's about just all the thousands of decisions we make about the way things are priced and the way things are, but it's not usually like a license fee. We don't, I wish the world were that I could simplify it in that way, but I can't really.
Thank you.
But it's unbelievably important.
Where would you like to open next?
I would like to open a lot of
Madison Avenue.
Exactly. So it's a tough one because I'm actually really not looking for new countries, and I'll tell you why. I can always do more in the same countries than I can do in a new country, right? Because we don't just go and come back. We set up, and I have a whole team there. So it is a more complex system when I have another country. Having said that, there are a lot of requests. There are a lot of conversations going on about Egypt, about Lebanon, about Uzbekistan. I think that Uzbekistan is very possible, partially because the government's really invited us to be there, and but that's also a question about funding. The thing I don't want to do is go to a country where I have a teeny bit of funding and start something which is just not that great, and then you run out, and I have to take funding from another place, which doesn't work. So there is a huge financial element to it. My guess is Uzbekistan and/or Lebanon.
Lebanon. A lot going on.
I mean, we are going to start working with Lebanese artisans this year in connection with a sort of reconnecting the Levant project.
There's so many.
But that's like a dipping toe in.
And Morocco.
I mean, I would love to work in Morocco. But part of me is like, we should all just be more like Morocco. But I know that Morocco would not, many people in Morocco would be like, no, it's slipping. So, yes. My guess is that, I don't know. I'm not going to guess. It'd be amazing.
See where it goes. Anyone else? Yes.
So I know, Shoshana, you've done restoration works and when you started it with Top, but this connection between the architecture, the urban fabric, and the artisans, because when they work in the historic city, the cities are very much an influence on them. And I was wondering if in the other countries you've also dealt with that urban context, because we're losing this architecture.
Totally.
Because like in Egypt, every time I go in one of those dilapidated houses, it's full of artisans. And I always think, if they demolish this house, where will these people go?
Yeah.
So this connection between the architecture and the craftsmanship.
Totally central. And the best we've ever done is in Afghanistan, and I've never done it as good since. It's the honest truth, because we restored 150 buildings, and what happened is that the artisans, the institute was put in these historic buildings. So literally we would just send the artisans out to go find motifs. And they'll find these carved lotus flowers, and they'll find proportional realities in arches and all of this stuff that they didn't know about. We send them to Herat to see these incredible monuments. So they are not different. The built heritage and craftsmanship are one language, one conversation. And actually, conversation in Uzbekistan is a problem of disconnection between makers who have been highly commercialized. They're just making objects. Yeah, but what sells? Objects.
So that's the
what makes the most
commercial,
money.
authentic, like, right.
Totally. And part of reconnecting, we believe will be what we're being asked to do possibly, is partially about quality and about reconnecting to heritage. But the reconnecting to heritage, which I don't think people appreciate enough, is to the built environment, is to those buildings. In every place, we've always restored buildings. So in Palestine, we've restored a building, Dar al-Ghazawi in Bethlehem. The building itself has stained glass, and it has tiles, and it has stone masonry, but more importantly, we just filled it with Palestinian craft, light fixtures and everything else. So yes, I wish we could do more of it. It is more expensive, is part of the difficulty, is that like restoring a building is always, but a lot of times what's wonderful is when somebody wants their building restored and it's like, will you make use of it? Like, yes, I will, please. You pay for the building restoration and I will make it live.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think what we'd love to do is go outside. We've got food and drink, and we have a wonderful array of Turquoise Mountain and some of our SK brands and products. So go have a little mingle. And ask questions and feast your eyes.
Thank you for coming, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.